It's Wednesday evening, and you're listening to Mystic Moon Cafe on the Mystic Light and Shadows channel on Blog Talk Radio. Mystic Moon Cafe is a program that deals with the supernatural, paranormal, esoteric, and unexplained events and phenomena existing around us. For the next 2 hours, we will hear from experts in their respective fields. Take your questions and comments via phone at 646-716-6207 or by Twitter, Facebook, and the Blog Talk chat room. Now, join Wendy Schindler and Travis Short for Mystic Moon Cafe. You're listening to Mystic Moon Cafe. The views and opinions expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of the hosts, the network, or our sponsors.
I'm gone. Oh, the song is over. The disembodied voice in my head is telling me that we are live. Hey, Travis Short with you on Mystic Moon Cafe tonight. I am flying solo, and God only knows what that means. Wendy is not here to keep me in line, which means I have no inner voice, Jiminy Cricket consciousness conscience that is going to tell me what to do and what I can't say. So I have to try to govern myself tonight on this particular show. Wendy is under the weather. She has a very bad migraine. We send her our best, our thoughts and our prayers, and positive energy her way, hoping that she feels better very soon. We've got a great show lined up for you tonight. We have an author that I will be, I'll be reading his bio when we bring him on here in just a few moments, but he is a prolific writer, author of hundreds of books, and we're very excited. This is his first time on Mystic Moon Cafe, but hopefully it is not going to be his last. We're hoping that he will come back on in future shows. Next Wednesday night, just to give you a heads up, Nick Redfern will be back with us, which means I will be #Redferning all over the place. We will be talking about his newest book, Shapeshifters, which I finished while I was in Louisville last week. An amazing book. He, as always, just a great job outlining shape-shifting, animals changing, humans turning into animals turning into humans, animals turning into different animals. It's the various levels of shapeshifting in this book are just mind-boggling. But a really solid read. Going to highly recommend it. I'll tell you at the end of the show where you can pick up copies of his book as well. But we're going to be focusing on 4 different titles tonight that our author has written, and we will be talking to him hopefully about all 4 of those titles. They are very solid reads. I read them a couple of weeks ago, not long, or probably I guess I finished the 4th one about a week before I went to Louisville for the Kentucky Broadcasters Association. But a lot going on in tonight's show. Hopefully folks in the chat room will be sending questions to us. Since Wendy is not here piloting, we have Carly that is overseeing things remotely for us. She's going to keep an eye on the chat room and let me know if there are any questions or any comments that have come our way so that we can direct those to our guest this evening. So lots of good stuff. Thank God it is Wednesday. It has been one of those weeks, as I always have. I promised Wendy I'm not going to whine and bitch too much tonight about the week that I've had, but it has been one of those weeks. Everything from general work problems to spending almost all day Monday getting rid of a bogus Facebook account that someone had set up in my name. That was fun. I found out about that on Friday morning and worked all weekend trying to get it taken care of. Finally got it resolved and down and not up there anymore. Sometime midday on Monday. That was a pain. Always fun. I don't know why anybody would want to pretend to be me. I mean, I keep claiming and begging. I want people to steal my identity and go through that issue. Anybody can be me besides me. But why they would choose to post on a bogus Facebook account is totally beyond me. But tonight is Wednesday, October the 18th. We are getting closer and closer to Halloween. This is my favorite time of the year. I love October. I love fall. I love the feel in the air. I love the smell that's in the air. I love the leaves. I love everything about this time of year. And we are hoping that you are having a very safe and happy October as well. Hopefully, you guys are watching horror films. If you're not listening to us, I hope you're watching horror films. But I hope that you're doing both. I hope you got a nice horror film playing in the background and you're listening to Mystic Moon Cafe. which is not so much a cafe tonight. It's more like Mystic Moon, table for one in the corner with the lonely, creepy guy who's just sitting there and has absolutely nothing going on. But lots of good stuff, as I said, in the show tonight. Lots of good questions for our author, Brad Steiger. I'll be telling you more about him in a little bit. This man is amazing. He has been writing books on the supernatural, the paranormal, the esoteric for years. Like I said, hundreds of titles. Millions of copies in print. And I'll give you some specific numbers when we bring him on. I hope Carly played our disclaimer. Of course, you guys know that when Carly or Wendy, either one, are running our studio, I can't hear things. So I'm not sure if she played her disclaimer, because that disclaimer was set up especially for me, not necessarily our guests or our call-ins, but the things that actually may come out of my mouth in the course of our programming. So I'm hoping that. Oh, the disembodied voice says, yes, I played it. Got your ass covered. So that's a good thing. So my ass is thoroughly covered. I can say whatever I want to and not get into too much trouble. And our programming is always flagged not for children, just because of yours truly, but we do try to keep it at least an R-rated level. I try not to go anywhere beyond that on the scheme of things. But then it is October. There was a full moon, and we had the whole Planet X and Nibiru thing. God only knows what may happen in the course of a program where I am left unattended all by myself. So we've got some other guests we are trying to line up. There's actually an author that I forgot about until today, and I'm supposed to be following up with them, getting them on sometime in November. We probably, just as an FYI for our listeners, probably will take the Wednesday before Thanksgiving off. I don't know that necessarily. Wendy and I haven't talked about it, but I was just kind of thinking about that today. We may take that Wednesday off and not do a show. But we'll let you know and keep you posted as to what is going on there. I want to remind you, you can always follow us. We are, of course, on Facebook at Mystic Moon Cafe. You can find us on Twitter at Mystic Moon C. I got a little carried away one evening and thought it was actually spelling out cafe, and it wasn't. I ran out of characters, so it just ended up as Mystic Moon C. But you can follow us on Twitter. You can go to our YouTube channel. Actually, Wendy does a great job of taking the time of uploading all of the audio content to a YouTube channel so that you can go back and listen to the programming there as well. No video yet. Thank God. And hopefully there never will be. But definitely the audio is there for you to listen to. You can always go to Spreaker.com and find Mystic Moon Cafe, and you can listen to our archived programming there as well. And you can always email us. Wendy takes great care of monitoring all of our social media. As a matter of fact, I do very little with ours, because I'm so busy with the two radio stations that I manage. But Wendy does an amazing job of keeping up with social media and our email, which is mysticmooncafe@gmail.com. So if you have guests that you would like on the show, if you have topics you would like us to cover, if you have questions, if you would like to be on the show, then you can reach us all of those ways. Of course, you can message us on Facebook, which actually is where most of our guests have been coming from here in the recent weeks. So when we have some folks we're going to be bringing back on, we've got Richard Estep and Vanessa Mitchell that we're going to be having back on, authors of Spirits of the Cage. We want to have Chad Dillard and Alta coming back on as well, talking about some of their experiences. We'd love to have Andrea Perrin back on, Bill Bean, a lot of our regulars that kind of make the circuit throughout the year. Want to definitely have those folks back on. Speaking of Andrea, and this isn't related to Andrea, but it was one of those things right then. It was a verbal and mental cue for me. Many of you remember when Wendy and I first started, actually when I first was a guest on this show back in 2013, I was helping Susan Bell as she promoted an event that she was hosting. It started out I was going to be in Las Vegas. It ended up being on the Queen Mary, but it was the Beyond Expo event. And that's actually how Wendy and I met, how we became friends, and then how I ended up co-hosting this show with her. But Susan Bell, who was with me on several shows, who has called in on numerous occasions to our programs, has been a listener and has called in to talk to some of our guests, especially when Andrea Perrin is on. Susan lives in L.A. Well, splits her time between L.A. and Las Vegas, but she's actually back on the East Coast. She's in Georgia. Her mother passed away Friday morning, I believe it was. So we just want to send our thoughts, our prayers, and our positive energy to Susan and her family. One of Susan's daughters, Jody, was trying to get a flight out of L.A. to get to Georgia so she could make it for the funeral, and hope that worked out for her. But just wanted to toss that out there into the universe and tell Susan we love her and we appreciate her, and we're very sorry for the loss that she and her family have endured over the course of the past several days, and we send as much positive energy her way as we possibly can. It sounds better when Wendy says it. She has that very loving, caring sounding voice. I don't have that, but I do mean it. It is very heartfelt when I say those words. So I definitely hope that Susan feels us thinking about her and sending positive energy her way. We're coming out. It's about 11 minutes after 9 o'clock. We're going to be bringing Brad Steiger on, and we're going to introduce him after the song we've got coming up. Carly has picked out a great song for us. She has Brickfield's Vicksburg Blues that we're going to be playing for you. And actually, that may have been a Wendy song. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure what goes on behind the scenes. Hell, I just basically show up, plug in a microphone, and I'm here. That's pretty much what I do. Wendy is kind of the minstrel on the street corner. I'm the monkey that jumps out of the box and dances and makes people laugh. That is what I do. That is the role that I play in this particular song and dance team. Like Abbott and Costello, Laurel and Hardy, Hope and Crosby, and Martin and Lewis. And I am all of the doofuses out of that equation. That is my role in this particular program. But we are going to bring the song on. It is Brickfield's Vicksburg Blues, and after the song, we'll be coming back with our guest, Brad Steiger, and we'll be talking with him about his 4 most recent titles that have been released just in time for Halloween. They are part of the Real Nightmare series. I'll tell you about those after the song. Sending it back to the studio right now for Carly to send us out with a great song, and then give me a countdown so I know how much time.
never gonna be healed. Me anymore. Devil, devil, clever devil, devil. How quickly they do sell their souls for the feast and the promise of gold. But devil, that won't be me. Devil, devil, bones of metal, metal. You told your face with a single glance, make them think they ever stood a chance. Do not try me, devil, devil. Cannot buy me, devil, devil. You won't make a fool of me. Oh no. What makes you so special, special? To think I would never settle for that devious dance between you and me, devil, devil. Rebel, rebel, call me a rebel, rebel. I walk the plank, not a tear in my eye. I won't go down your blushing pride. Under the water, I'll be sharpening my knife. Do not try me, devil, devil. Cannot buy me, devil, devil. You won't make a fool of me. Oh no. What makes you so special, special? To think I would never settle for that devious dance between you and me, devil, devil. Devil, devil. You take the shape of everything I'm drawn to. You take the shape of everything I'm drawn to.
And we are back live here on Mystic Moon Cafe. We had a couple of minutes of some technical problems, still working the kinks out of some of our production equipment here. But we have tonight, and I first of all, again, I miss Wendy, my co-host. She is kind of the balance to this particular program, but hoping that she continues to feel better nursing that migraine, and looking forward to having her back on the show with me next Wednesday. We have tonight a first-time guest, which I love. We had one a couple of weeks ago. We had Koldrosha Ona Carroll, the Queen of the Paranormal, her very first time on Mystic Moon Cafe. And again, tonight we have another first. We have Brad Steiger. Now, Brad is a world-renowned author of over 175 books with over 17 million copies in print, at least at the time that this biography was written, and maybe more than that now. His titles include Mysteries of Time and Space, Real Ghosts, Restless Spirits and Haunted Places, Conspiracies and Secret Societies, The Complete Dossier, Touched by Heaven's Light, American Indian Medicine Power, Strangers from the Skies, Project Blue Book, The Rainbow Conspiracy, Real Encounters, Different Dimensions, and Otherworldly Beings, and many more. Steiger first began publishing articles on the unexplained in 1956. We're going to find out what prompted him to do that on the show tonight. Since then, he has written more than 2,000 paranormal-themed articles. Between 1970 and 1973, his weekly newspaper column, The Strange World of Brad Steiger, was carried domestically in over 80 newspapers and overseas from Bombay to Tokyo. He was born in Fort Dodge, Iowa on February 19th. He is married to Sherry Hansen Steiger, author and co-author of over 22 books herself. They have 2 sons, 3 daughters, and 10 grandchildren. So it is with great pleasure that I bring Brad Steiger on the show tonight. Brad, thank you so much for joining me. And I think I lost Brad. Let's message Carly. Yeah, we lost Brad. I don't know. I'm not sure what happened, but we dropped him. Let's see if we can get him back. Let me see if I can get him back. Let's see. We're going to try this, folks. I've never done this. I don't even know if they can still hear me. They can still hear me. Awesome. Wonderful. Great. I don't. Okay, I don't have the option to show the dial. Oh, yeah. Yes, I do. Okay. And let me get the phone number. We won't give it out over the air, but let me grab it. And see. Let's see. Sorry, folks. This is what happens with technical problems. You think I could get used to this on a regular, as much as technical problems as I have with everything that I do. I wonder, let's see. Oh, such a wonderful day. It's like a Monday.
All right, Travis, I'll join you for a second on air since you're going to try to call Brad back.
Yeah. Thank you. I would appreciate that. I need a little bit of help while I try to do this. I don't know if it's going to work or not.
Yeah, I'll fill some dead space for you.
Thank you. Oh, that's loud.
What is it? Oh, the dialing thing? Yes,
yeah,
it's loud.
See, I couldn't hear it when you dialed.
Yes, it's incredibly loud. So, yes, unfortunately, migraines suck. The week has been rather busy, but it's been good. And what else? What else is going on? Nothing. Nothing else is going on. It's almost Halloween. Did you know people are putting up Christmas decorations?
That's ridiculous.
I know, it's a travesty.
Is that a TRAVIS?
TRAVIS, like Travis?
Travesty, right.
Oh,
see?
Yeah, exactly. I gotcha.
Okay, I can't call out.
Okay, let me mute myself and try my...
Carly's going. We're going to bring Brad back on. Hopefully we will do this. I do not know what the problem is. I apologize, folks. I'm going to let her... Oh, wait, no, because I'll have to talk to Brad. So... Go ahead and play one of those songs again while we try to get... Yeah, let's do that. Just tell me when. Okay. Okay, we're back live here. We had a little bit of technical problems once again. I know, Brad, we got your bio out. So what I want to do now before I bring you on is real quickly address the new 4 titles, because this is why Brad is on the show tonight. Just in time for Halloween, he has 4 new titles. They fall in the Real Nightmare category. Real Nightmares, Alien Strangers in Foreign Worlds is a dark page-turner revealing creepy strangers and shape-shifting species, unexpected warnings, and mysterious vanishings. Real Nightmares, ghastly grisly spooks, fiendish ghosts, demonic spirits. Real Nightmares, secret schemes and conspiring cabals, shocking discoveries. See, I've been doing this all day. I've had a radio show this morning and I still can't talk tonight. Shocking discoveries, suppressed witnesses, attempted anarchy. It details stories of top secret documents, government's lies, and the constant struggle for power, which basically is politics in general. And then Freaks, Fiends, and Evil Spirits, dark stories of rabid creatures awaiting, unnatural squeals, hair-raising yelps, and wretched cries, keeping the readers on edge. These are the 4 titles that are available right now that you can pick up. They are in ebook format. And Brad is with us tonight as a first-time guest on Mystic Moon Cafe. Brad, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Now, I want to jump right in. What got you interested? Your bio says you started writing about the unexplained in 1956. What got you interested in the supernatural, the paranormal, the esoteric?
Well, I really had no choice. I grew up in a haunted house. It had been the stagecoach stop in olden days. And as my sister and I say, as we were awakened several times in the night, there must have been a lot of passengers that missed the stage because they were walking through the house all night. And once one got over the unknown visitors, it wasn't that bad, except for suddenly, there might be a sudden pounding beside you or a door open and close or something like that. But I became passionately interested in trying to understand what this is, because many people say, if we talk about it, oh, it's your imagination. Mm-hmm. Well, imagination, doesn't bang the door and throw the door open. And as I grew older, I actually encountered some very frightening situations, which if you can just imagine for one moment that you're 15 years old and you're home alone and your parents are gone for the evening, and suddenly the door throws itself open, the locked door throws itself open. The furniture begins throwing itself around the room. Knocks and thuds and so forth are sounding throughout surrounding me. And what is it? Our faithful dog, who was, the ultimate defender. Sometimes out in the country, dogs, there's a particular disease that affects them, and we were short a dog. We actually had to run down a wild dog and steal its puppy, and grew into the marvelous dog Queenie that we had, and I mean, she would have defended me to the very last bite, and she was baffled, and she was jumping here and there, and I got so frightened that I got my slide action Winchester. And I said, go, it's going to, or I'll shoot. And then I thought, what am I going to shoot? I can't see anything. and then just like that, it stops. And of course, about then, that strange kind of experience I have learned has happened to many kids who live in the country. And I'm wondering if this is nature spirits that suddenly get a little ticked off by the way we're messing with the environment, or was there a ghost or a monster, or what was it? So I take a very open approach. Now, I was not injured in any way. I was just really frightened, as I think any normal human would be if an unseen force is throwing your furniture around. And so when I entered it as a investigator, going out, hearing about haunted houses, or people calling me, will you come look? I think we have a ghost in the house. I had never been harmed in any way. And so I developed the theory that the majority of ghosts are somehow impressed on the environment. It's a residual energy that someone lived there, someone perhaps had a difficult time, a difficult death, a terrible death with a disease or whatever, and somehow that passage left an impression on the environment. And that seemed to work for so many cases that I investigated. Then, of course, comes a time when that explanation just didn't fit. When I angered, I guess, an unseen entity, I was in a room in the basement. This is a basement where blood would flow from the walls, or what appeared to be blood. There were faces impressed on the walls of the basement, and the people were seeing just a wide variety of entities. And so when I was in with, I had with me the very famous psychic, Irene Hughes. You may have heard of her.
Yes.
And we were in this room, and the door kept trying to close on me, trying to close. And it had to. Now, Travis, understand, this is a rough basement where they just quickly poured the basement. This is probably 100-year-old house. Mm-hmm. And so it had to grit, it had to push to be able to close. But it would push over those bumps and raises in the cement or whatever they laid down and try to close it in. And when Irene finished getting impressions, I said defiantly, "Okay, let the blankety blank have the closet, close the door and lock it." And then I stomped upstairs. Well, there were probably 6 of us upstairs. There were reporters from different newspapers, and Irene, myself, and one of my buddies, a former Green Beret who always was with me, and we're standing there talking, and all of a sudden we hear this terrible noise downstairs. We hear the door literally being ripped off, and something that sounds like King Kong coming up the stairs, and then we were all lifted into the air and dropped. Now, wow. That made me revise a lot of my pacifist philosophy when it came to ghosts. Mm-hmm. There's obviously some kind of intelligence that can get angered, can be, I insulted it, and it came after me. It came after all of us. Yep. So I now have a very open attitude to all of this phenomena. No one has the final answer. No one knows exactly what we have, what we are dealing with. Now, is this, for so many people, and you almost have to say, the survival question has to be a part of it. Maybe. Mm-hmm. But then, maybe this intelligence only appears like grandpa or grandma or mom or dad to deceive us, to take us off guard. Maybe we're really dealing with an intelligence from another dimension that just from time to time loves coming down here and kind of whacking things around.
And messing with us a little bit.
And messing with us. Some people to greater degree. Mm-hmm. And so I have been on the path ever since. The book that maybe I'll be talking with you next year for Halloween which comes out in July, will be a book that's devoted to the ghost phenomena and really ask the question, what is a ghost really? What is a ghost really? And exploring, all the things that it could be, but it surely, the phenomena exists.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to learn how to control it. The people who, really, it extends from abject fear to worship,
Mm-hmm.
to the entity, whatever it is, directing people's lives.
Yes.
And
we as I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just going to say, we as a society, as a culture, have gone from being afraid of the things that go bump in the night to actually seeking them out, wanting to have those experiences. And we've had several different groups of paranormal investigators who've been on the show. I have done my own. I'm not a paranormal investigator as far as ghost hunting and things like that. I've been on a few. I'm more,
Mm-hmm.
I consider myself more, I always said a parajournalist or a paranormal researcher. I enjoy researching the event, the history behind it. That's what prompted my business partners and I back in the early 2000s to actually produce the first feature-length documentary on the original Mothman sightings in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Darkwings, the Mothman Chronicle. We spent about 6 years researching and talking and recreating and getting to know these people. But it was while there in Point Pleasant, which is just this cross section of paranormal activity, that I had some of my first paranormal experiences. And I was in my late 20s and early 30s at that point, but I did experience both residual, and then later I've experienced more what I would call an intelligent, active paranormal experience, as you've talked about. And I don't think there's any one particular kind. I think that they range, just like every human relationship that we have. Some are friendships, some are romantic, some are people we never want to see again. So there's these different levels of relationship, and I believe the paranormal relationships can form the same way. And so I listening to you, we're on the same page when it comes to a lot of things. But one of the things, what I was getting at was the concept of people that want to have a paranormal experience. They go to these places, and they go many times uninformed and ill prepared, and they go wanting that experience. They go wanting to and the problem is, you don't know once you set foot into a certain physical realm, home, a hospital, a school, whatever, and there's paranormal activity. Until you've done your research, you don't know if it's residual, if it's intelligent, if it's demonic, if it's another dimension. There are so many levels to this paranormal reality, this paranormal world, so many things that go on behind that veil, that you literally are playing Russian roulette in a paranormal sense.
Absolutely. And, bless you for making that point. This is something I've tried to repeat again and again in the books. You have to know, because, what you are is what you get. What you believe is what you receive, to a large degree. Yes. And to go cold into it. I mean, again, the really horrific situations that I've investigated, if I hadn't been prepared and studied everything, beginning with the British Society for Psychical Research in the 1800s and every available manuscript and so forth I could get my hand on, plus just the research and the writing and so forth of my own, you just have to train for this. So we might as well say it. You have to train. You have to be a spiritual athlete, if we're allowed to make that or a metaphysical athlete, whichever you prefer.
Yeah. Now, I just got a text. My co-host, who is not feeling well and not with us, but is listening tonight, Wendy Schindler, is listening to the show, and she sent in a statement/question in the vein of what we're talking about. She says, many people are drawn to the paranormal because they're seeking meaning in our lives and life after death, and that draws many to wanting to research and be involved in the paranormal. And I think she brings up a good point there.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and that's what I briefly mentioned before. Is we cannot leave out the survival aspect of this, and that's probably still even today with all the ghost shows on television.
Yep.
I'm sorry not to laugh.
But, I do too.
Come on, Travis. How many times have you heard something touched me? I mean,
well, for me, not nearly as often as I would like to say that, but I have heard it many times on those shows. So.
It's just invariable, that, or what was that? Did you hear that? I know there's something over there. And then the electronic voice phenomena. Yes. I mean, people send them to me all the time, and I don't know if they're parrots mating, if that's what I'm hearing, or, just screeches. And every once in a while you hear, but how I have to be a believer in the individual, of course, or, it's when I hear, close the door, we are here, and it's over, and I think, come on, is the spirit going to say that? I mean, so that's why in the new book I've asked also many of my compatriots, my colleagues, to put their answer too, and I think it'll be a very informative book for a lot of people. Well, just as again, not to ignore this Halloween treat that my publisher and the staff gave me. I mean, this is a surprise to me. You realize that, that
that's
we've come out. Yeah.
Yeah. Wendy just texted me again because we're talking about these paranormal shows and hearing and seeing and being touched, and she sent back. We literally laugh at those shows, and we have made fun of them on this program because when the very first one, Ghost Hunters, premiered like over a decade ago, the first couple of seasons of that show, there was nothing. It was just really about the camaraderie of the investigators, and it was the experience and the history and all that. And then all of a sudden, to keep the ratings up, and I know some people in the sci-fi entertainment industry there at the Sci-Fi Channel, basically it was, you're going to have to find things, or there's going to have to be some cliffhangers, and there's going to have to be some evidence, or the show's getting canceled. And then
of course.
And then every damn show, it was they saw something, they captured something, they heard something, they were touched, they were scratched. It was and then you had the spin-off programs and all of the other shows coming along. And in a way, it has helped the paranormal research world because it really has kind of brought it to the mainstream. But there has been a trade-off because in some ways, the legitimacy of the investigation and the research has been tarnished even more than it was before because of these types of things.
Yeah. Well, when my first books came out, let's see, there was Hans Holzer.
Yes.
And Ruth Montgomery. And myself, and I can't think who a fourth would be, but I'm sure there was. And it's interesting talking to Alexandra. People on various talk shows were calling me the grandfather of the supernatural or the paranormal. Mm-hmm. And I said, no, Alexandra Holzer and I worked that out. Hans is the grandfather, and we decided I'm the great uncle.
Still in the family, just not the patriarch.
But But Hans certainly, was the first to really get the books out of actual investigations and so forth.
Well, you did have Holzer. You had John Keel, of course, who in the 60s and 70s with his research into UFOs and
absolutely.
And then, of course, the Warrens and their research and their investigations. And actually, you deal with at least one that I can remember, and you revisit Amityville, which was one of their cases, and several other investigators, of course.
Yeah.
But right now, the books are kind of all running together in my head. They're I see the chapters, but I actually see the Real Nightmares as being one book. And then there being sections to the book, and then these chapters all just being in one book in the way that I read it. So, because I started with one and just worked my way all the way through.
That would be a good way to handle it. Now, you mentioned Keel, and of course, he was a good friend of mine. And in those days, we didn't have this marvelous internet to send mail back and forth, but we probably wrote every day. Or when I came to New York, actually, I ate my first Chinese restaurant with John. He introduced me to Chinese food.
That's funny.
And so I heard about, the Mothman from his perspective as he was writing the book. Mm-hmm. And it was, he really got into it with that. And
he did.
And the whole Mothman thing is really a kind of an archetype of a whole group of that kind of nature spirit again. Here we go, nature spirit. Or, we can't really say that's a ghost, can we?
No,
but we can.
No, I was going to say you're. When we did the documentary film, I actually became one of the recognized leading experts in the 20th and 21st century on Mothman. Actually, was on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie several times, talking about it, and actually spoke at the Mothman Festival for several years because I brought about what I called the religious implications, the winged entity, how that those winged entities appear in various cultures across the world, spanning centuries and millennia.
Absolutely.
And what is it that because Mothman for me was very fascinating, and I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on Mothman because you have so much that I want to talk about.
No, I'd really like to see your film. I have it.
For me, what was so interesting about Mothman is where with a lot of the paranormal things, you have some type of evidence, whether it's a photograph or a video or an audio, as you mentioned, EVP, regardless of how questionable. But with Mothman, there was none of that. No one ever captured him on picture. There was there were no videos like you have of Bigfoot and the Patterson film. None of that. Mothman was entirely eyewitness testimony. That was it. That was all that you had to go on, and it was credible eyewitnesses. And so it was a very intriguing aspect of paranormal research because it wasn't like, okay, here's a grainy picture of something flying or here's video footage of something taking off. This was people giving you their eyewitness accounts and still 40 years later being terrified when they were recounting their story.
Yes. Now that's again the religious aspect or the paranormal aspect. Also, I never had enough to do a book on it. But I did receive a number of reports from those who had served in Vietnam.
Yes.
And they reported a similar being. But they had now again, you can say lonely GIs, but they had a feeling that it was feminine, that it was a female. But it would glow, and it had the wings, and it would come down where they were on guard, where they were doing watch or so forth. And the ones that I received, Travis, they were very sincere, and they had a lot of detail. But again, people say, well, lonely soldiers and et cetera, et cetera. So you'd have to get a group of them. But what do we have now? We have a flying Mothman type creature in Chicago.
Yes.
And then we'll have another one show up in Texas. So these entities are really in a class by themselves. And I'm saying that, because with the paranormal, you do end up putting them in different classes, in different categories, and then recognizing that maybe they're all the same. Maybe they all come from the same origin. Maybe their origin is the same. Or are they all just fragments of our creative group consciousness?
Absolutely. Again, going back to the archetype, is this something that we're even projecting? And Keel even mentioned that in this book, talking about tulpas and thought projection, and were we projecting? Because I have, and this is one of those stellar moments for me that I was very fond and very proud of. In his latter days, Keel became very reclusive, but I did have the opportunity on two occasions to interview him, and I did. Mm-hmm. I found myself being very, very humbled, but also very proud at that moment. But it was very interesting to talk to him about that and hear his thoughts and how that his thoughts changed on Mothman over four decades. I mean, he started out in the book making certain claims, and then he altered them in the 70s. He altered them again in the 80s, and then he in the early 2000s when I talked to him, he had again altered them. And I don't think that is anything more than someone experiencing more in life and looking back in retrospect on experiences and saying, I'm going to have to bring those experiences into my worldview now and what I now know, because it's not that he discounted Mothman. It was just that he changed his perspective. His views changed. The older he got, the more he experienced, and I think that happens to all of us.
All of us, and
yes,
and wouldn't it be a shame if every researcher just held fast to his original theory? I mean, we have to grow too. As researchers and explorers, we have to grow too, or we're not doing a service to our readers, our audience.
Absolutely. It is, none of us set out. That's why we're researching. We don't have the answers. That's why That's why we're investigating. We don't have the answers. We want to know, and sometimes those answers, those views are going to change. It's just that's what happens. The more you research, the more you get answers, the more you evolve, the more your views evolve, the more your perspectives change. And quite frankly, I hope I never really come to a definitive answer on anything, because how boring would life be if there were no more questions to ask?
Oh, yeah. That's what leads us on. The selections of for this Real Nightmares series, as I said, they're chapters selected from some of the various books, and I think they've done a great job. And as I said to longtime friend the other day, it's really I look at it, maybe this is just my ego, but I look at it as kind of a tribute, that they had selected these and felt that they were worthy to stand by themselves to inform people. But of course, as a publisher, you can't blame him for having the certainly side interest of now you can buy the whole book. Now you can buy the whole books. But I guess there's nothing wrong with that. I think it's tastefully done.
It is, and they are great reads. They are, because they are just that. They're like kind of like each book is kind of like a compilation of essays on different topics that are interrelated. And
that's what I would say, essays.
Yeah, they're very much essays. It's not that any one book tells any one story from beginning to end, but it's just this great, picking it up, what I would call tabletop books. You could pick it up, you could read a chapter or a couple of chapters, go do something, and then a couple of days later come back, pick it up, and read something totally different, but you're still getting the same information. You're still being enlightened and educated and entertained in these stories. But not.
Well, I hope there are many, many people who agree with you.
Well, if they don't, screw them, because right now the only thing that matters on this show is my perspective. So, and I was going to tell you, you said something earlier when you were talking. You said blankety blank. You actually don't have to edit yourself on this particular show. That's the great thing about an internet radio show. You can use all of the expletives and all of the hyperbole that you want. We don't have a problem.
Oh, okay.
So, I get in trouble. I get in trouble if I do. My co-host. That's why we have a disclaimer. It's not for the guests. It's not for our call-ins. It's for me. It's what comes out of my mouth that gets us in trouble. So she made me create a disclaimer for this particular program. But it's all for me.
So it's really Psyche Unchained, is what you're saying. It
is Psyche Unchained. With that, we call it Stream of Consciousness Radio. It's just kind of all over the place. We just kind of go here and there and see what we can get into. Now, I want to pick up. We've talked about the books, and we're already into our second hour, and it's amazing to me sometimes how quickly things fly by. I want to pick up. I want to talk about Real Nightmares, and this one is Alien Strangers and Foreign Worlds, and this ties right in, dovetails nicely to talking about Mothman and entities and things like that. And really, I just want to pick up because the story that they use to open this particular anthology is one of my favorites, and that's the Shaver Mystery.
The good old Shaver Mystery.
The Great Shaver Mystery, and it's Warnings to Future Man is the title of the chapter. The Shaver Mystery, for those, I mean, you know what, this is your area. I will let you educate if they're not familiar with the Shaver Mystery. Educate them.
Well, if I may,
yes.
If I had edited this book of collections of my work, I would have begun with the Hollow Earth.
Yes.
And then the Shaver Mystery.
Yes, because the Hollow Earth comes much later. Well, not much later, but several chapters later.
Yeah. And so first we have the Hollow Earth. Now, this ancient beliefs we have, especially among the Buddhists and the Hindus, that the Nagas, they were a very proud race of serpent people, and they dwelt in this underground kingdom. And one could go there for enlightenment, one could go there for to be safe from danger and so forth. And this was all connected. And in the Mahabharata, we have the whole idea of the female form that was used by Lord Shiva to, again, create illusion, but also to teach people. And we have the ancient book, the Ramayana, and then the Agartha. So we must, I think, understand that this was really, is really, but certainly was strongly, a belief of many of the Eastern people. And then we extend that, and I have encountered and written about, because I thought it was fascinating, that the Hollow Earth takes on another view, another stage, when people began to say that when an Atlantis-type disaster occurred in far ancient times, many of the survivors went underground, and they are still living underground. And that gets into Atlantis and Lemuria. And, if people aren't familiar, Lemuria is kind of another Atlantis. And they have really entire, very large followings of people who strongly believe in Lemuria and Atlantis, of course. Now, one of my most popular books in terms of sale was Atlantis Rising. What I did there, in each chapter, I took a different view of what Atlantis could have been. So I start with the collapse of this ancient, but then I say, is this really describing the collapse of civilization on Venus and a coming to Earth of the survivors? Is that what we mean by survivors? Maybe Noah's Ark didn't happen here. Maybe it happened on another planet. So I take every chapter deals with a different view of what Atlantis could be. Well, now we have Ray Palmer, who is a terrific guy. Just as an aside, Ray was the creator of Fate magazine before Kurt and Mary Fuller took it over, and he was the editor of. There would be few people old enough to recognize the Ziff Davis line of magazines, but when I was a kid, there were so many pulp magazines that were just, that's something that beginning writers will never get a chance to break in, as I did in the pulps, right. and just the sheer reading, the science fiction, the fantasy, and so forth. So he was the editor. He had a background. And, of course, I heard about the shaver. He was talking about the shaver mystery of this gentleman who claimed that he had been taken by the Darrow and the Tarot. The Darrows are these, Darrow stands for detrimental robot. And the way we're going, we might have a few detrimental robots of our own coming up. Yes. And then there were the Tarot, and they were a more positive or a benign aspect. And he had been taken there and lived there, and Ray told me that he had gone actually to Shaver's home, and he heard the voices speaking from below. And now it began, of course, when Shaver just sent a manuscript, 10,000-word manuscript to Palmer. And he thought, this is too good, to just use it once. And he really created this whole mystique. Now, Ray himself, he was a little person. So he's writing about, many people had their exposure to UFOs and reading about them in Ray's magazines. Mm-hmm. And, of course, at that time, the zeitgeist dictated that aliens coming from other worlds would be short little people. And when you met Ray, he comes out and says, I know, don't say it, because he himself, was a little person. But, oh, what a brain, giant brain. He was giant in every other way. So the Abandero, they were the nasty people there, and he kept pumping it. So the idea that these machines, they hold sex orgies, the Tarot do, not the Darrow, because they're robots. Mm-hmm. And they will eventually begin to take over the earth if we're not careful and we have to keep guard. And it caught the imagination, and Ray just had that genius about him of people not taking it as a science fiction story, but as taking it as Richard Shaver has really been in the caves. He's really been in the hollow earth. It really exists.
Right. Well, what I find interesting, as you mentioned, going back to various cultures that deal with a civilization below us and a civilization above us. Quite frankly, most religion has a civilization existing above us and one below us, as above, so below. But the Shaver mystery really did kind of reinvigorate the hollow earth theory, which has once again kind of been reinvigorated here in the past couple of years with people. Yes, it has. With this resurgence of people, especially with Google imaging, Google Maps, satellite imaging of Antarctica, and people detecting anomalies under the ice and things like that. So, I mean, this really is one of those things that is one of those mysteries that isn't dying out, but actually is picking up steam again.
Well, that blends into the next chapter or selection, the a mass invasion of Earth by Greys.
Yes.
Began in 1954. Now, there are people who strongly believe that, and that they're still infiltrating and walking among us, but not the way the Greys were portrayed. Now, we first see the UFO, the UFOnauts, as smallish entities, but in uniforms or spacesuits and helmets and the works, right? So now we slowly graduate into the Greys that look like naked little monsters. They have no clothing. They have these large skulls and the huge eyes, and they're the ones who, at this time, now we have to look at all these things, Travis, that are evolutions that have maybe a greater appeal to people now. But I think if you're really interested in the field, you want to see how things evolved. So many people believed then, when it came out, this whole theory about there's a big conspiracy, they're taking over. And this, of course, was done with a secret aspect of our government. They're selling us out because they get the benefit of it and so forth. So the Greys then, according to this dictum, had been living in the Hollow Earth. They had been living there for centuries, just waiting for the time when they could emerge and they could join their brethren coming from the stars and start taking over. And they had all kinds of horrible beams and rays and so forth that they could shine upon people. And again, you still hear people talking. And I get reports about the Greys. I know I saw a Gray. It was looking at me at the window the other night. And every day, well, no, I just received one, and we're going to jump ahead now. This would not be in the collection, but just to show how things progress. Many people, of course, still hold religiously, quote unquote, onto their Gray beliefs, but the Pleiadians have taken over for many people. Now, I just received from, well, I don't want to disclose the name, but someone with quite a background, has been Air Force pilot and so forth, so quite a background in the world, who has excitedly, he and his group, written to me with the illustrations of this Ukrainian singer who won the America's Got Talent, only the Ukraine has talent, won that, and they are convinced she is a Pleiadian. And her very songs, when they're translated, tell how the Pleiadians walk among us and how they're going to protect us and how they're going to take over. And we don't need to fear, because it's kind of like having mom and dad from the skies watch over us. Well, that appeals to many people. I think you would agree with me just as much as we've talked here. The fix I get on you is you really don't want anyone deciding things for you.
No.
I think our species, if anything, we although we slip and fall and do horrible things to each other, But I think, and I still believe in our potential, that I don't want anyone coming in from anywhere, any star, telling us what to do, and they're looking after us, and they'll protect us, and we don't need to think. We just exist.
Exactly. Exactly. No, I have gotten myself in so much trouble over in the course of my life by not having people spoon feed me what they want me to believe, but always questioning and wanting, as I said before, not necessarily wanting to have a definitive answer, but not simply believing something because someone tells me to believe it.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do that, and I never have been able to. I just, I grew up in a very, very religious home. I grew up educated in a Christian school. I was an ordained Southern Baptist minister for 5 years.
Really?
Yes, but I can't tolerate people believing something because someone. And I told him, I said, don't believe it because I tell you. Figure something out for yourself. Think. There's a reason that you have a brain and intellect and you have curiosity. We're supposed to figure these things out. And I'm very Gnostic in that approach. It's not necessarily about the destination. It's all about the journey getting there. It's about what we experience on our way. And Wendy and I both are like that. We both think for ourselves. And that's one of the things that gave birth to this program, was actually wanting to open up a forum for individuals to come on and talk and discuss and debate. And that's one of the things. I'm not a minister anymore. I have a great love of theology. I have a great belief in my personal belief in God. And I'm not going to get into any argument with anybody over what he is or who he is or what denomination he is or what religion he is. I just have a belief in a higher power. And that works for me. But what is very, what I do not want to do is to tell anybody how they're supposed to think and how they're supposed to believe and what they're supposed to do. And we wanted people to have that opportunity to come on and just talk and work through things and debate and discuss, because I do think that is the basis, quite frankly, of civilization, let alone, constructive paranormal research and even religion, is actually debating and discussing and coming to some common ground belief.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're speaking to a fellow Gnostic.
Okay.
When we weren't working in the field, as soon as school year began, probably went to church at least part of the day, every day of the week. Because we had, even though I'm sure the state wouldn't have approved it, we had religion in our school, and this is a public school. And then, of course, there were the meetings at the church and the guidance. And, well, the whole community decided that I was going to enter the Lutheran ministry. And that's the way I was brought up. In fact, when the minister would take his 2-day vacation, he wouldn't have to look for someone to come in, another pastor, because he would have me take over. Now, I couldn't do sacraments, of course, but I would take over the church services for the 2 Sundays when he was on vacation. I went to a Christian college. I taught in a Christian college. And everyone, again, all the ministers on the faculty assumed that I was going to go on, and I said, I'm really sorry. Well, I had a near-death experience too, so.
Well, yeah.
I saw that it didn't really matter as long as you were seeking and you were kind and it's good and treated people equally and all the golden rules. So I believe what the man from Galilee said, but I say I don't really think he said some of the climactic things that he said, or that has been misinterpreted. But again, Sherry is an ordained minister. She was on the staff of the Lutheran School of Theology. And
Okay.
of course, here we are. Some people think we're heretics.
Mm-hmm.
Some people think we're atheists. Some people think we're strange. The strange part is easy to deal with.
Well, yeah.
But I kind of consider myself a Gnostic transcendentalist, like Ralph Waldo Emerson. That kind of appeals to me. There are things beyond our understanding, things we cannot explain, but the challenge is to try to understand and be the best people we can be.
Absolutely. Henry David Thoreau, Ralph Waldo Emerson, those were two of my...
Yeah.
Because I started out as an English major in college, lit major in college, and then I was...
Well, that's what I taught.
Yeah, and then I went into communication and broadcasting, and then I was about... when I was ordained in the Southern Baptist denomination, I was pastoring. I was working on an MDiv with a major in theology. I was about 4 classes away when I actually from completing the MDiv, when I actually walked away from the ministry. There were lots of reasons and a lot personal things that were going on, so I just kind of stepped away. But Thoreau, Emerson, some of the greatest quotes that I can think of.
Absolutely.
A foolish consistency of the hobgoblin of little minds. Is this so bad to be misunderstood? And that's one of my favorites. If Pythagoras was misunderstood, Hippocrates was misunderstood, Jesus was misunderstood, all the great minds of the past have been misunderstood. Is it so bad to be misunderstood? Right. When you come to talking about being a heretic really, that's just someone that goes against the norm and outside goes against the flow. They're outside the norm, and they just think for themselves. Sometimes the heretics are good, sometimes they're bad. Being a heretic is not a definition of your morality. It's simply you saying, I don't agree with the way things are going.
No, and you probably do, Travis. I still have classmates who say they're praying for me.
Oh yes,
and that's fine. I say thank you. I need all the prayers I can get. Sure, send them on.
take them all. I'll take yours. I'll take the Buddhist. I'll take the Hindus. I'll take the shamans. I'll take any prayer is a good prayer.
Yeah. No, that's every time I meet someone like you who says almost exactly my life, I think, have you been spying on me? If you. Yep. But it is wonderful, when you meet someone of like mind, and neither one of us is saying we know it all, right? We don't have all the answers.
No, God, no. I'm so far from having all the answers. I've got more questions now than I've ever had in my life.
Absolutely. And
I love that, and I really do. And it was so funny because growing up as I did in the Baptist, and then becoming a Southern Baptist minister, my ex-wife was actually Catholic. So there was this interesting theological dichotomy going on there, here, and we did while I was pastoring the Baptist church. It was not unusual for us to be at 8:30 Mass on Sunday morning before we went to 11 o'clock service for the Baptist. We continued doing this ecumenical relationship,
covering all the bases there.
All the bases. Both of my children were baptized in the Catholic Church. And actually, the very first wedding that I performed as an ordained Southern Baptist minister was a joint Baptist Catholic marriage. The wife was Catholic. Her soon-to-be husband was Baptist. They wanted both, and they wanted to satisfy both families. So the Catholic priest at the time was a very good friend of mine, and he was very open to having an ecumenical wedding ceremony. He just wanted to make sure he wanted to make sure that the final prayer and blessing on the couple was a Catholic prayer and blessing, and he was he was fine with that.
Yeah. No, until recently, Sherry was still doing weddings. Because she is a pastor, and she also has she's also licensed by the state and so forth. So she was doing weddings until, especially when we lived in Arizona, she was doing quite a few weddings then. And it's a way of, it's the blending, it's the oneness, it's the whole concept of we are trying our best, I think, so many of us, and hopefully all of us in his or her own way. We are in a very difficult time now. I mean, let's not even try to gild the lily here. I don't think our nation has ever been this split or this disruptive. And I think that's the only way if we begin speaking out and saying, that these little things don't matter. Where you go to church, what you eat on Friday, what you do here, what you do there, what you wear.
What you do behind...
They don't matter.
No, what color your skin is, what you do behind closed doors, none of that matters.
Doesn't matter one twit.
Nope, not a bit. And we have totally, we have gone from talking about real nightmares to actually talking really deep, life-changing, metaphysical, transcendental, serious stuff. And that happens sometimes on this program when we get
Well, I'm bold. We say, and I suspect you do too, that's why you're here, Travis.
That's what I love about the show. I love the people that we bring on. I love the interactions that we have. I love when a conversation or when an interview becomes a conversation, and when it just takes on a life of its own, and it literally becomes organic. It's just bouncing back and forth and talking, and we're drawing on each other's life experiences. And obviously, you have many more than I do. Mine are just a slightly different perspective and a slightly different side of the country than yours. But I agree with you when you say that this country has never been more divided. I still work in 9 to 5. I manage 2 radio stations in Eastern Kentucky. I'm news. I handle the news and the programming and the HR and all that. And every day I go in and I have news story after news story after news story from countless news outlets. And we're talking left liberal news, I'm talking Fox News, I'm talking ultra conservative. I get it all on my desk.
Right.
And this country has never been more divided.
No.
I see more and more racial tension. I see more and more homophobia. I see more and more intolerance. I see more and more bullying. I see more and more fear in people's lives, and it really terrifies me. 2 weeks ago, almost 2 weeks ago, I was in Louisville, Kentucky for the Kentucky Broadcasters Association. I was talking to my ex-wife, and she was debating on whether or not to send my kids to school because there had been an active shooting threat at the school where they go. And it's like, do we send the kids or do we not send the kids? Do we teach them to? And it's one of those things. As a parent, you don't want to instill in your child fear that anytime something is threatened that you have to be afraid of it, but at the same time you don't want to put them in harm's way. So how do you walk that fine line? How do you manage and gauge those types of things? And here in Virginia, in Charlottesville a couple of months ago, you had the huge rioting there with the white supremacists. In Eastern Kentucky, where my radio stations are, we had it before that. They were actually there in Pikeville, Kentucky, holding this White Lives Matter this rally, and it didn't get as violent as it did in Charlottesville, but Pikeville, Kentucky was a precursor to what happened in Charlottesville, and it's a precursor to what's happening in Florida, and this shooting in Las Vegas, that has no motive whatsoever. They still no motive for what took place.
One of my hosts, we were to have an interview, such as we're doing, and he said, I just apologize. I apologize. But he said, I had 6 friends at that Las Vegas massacre. Mm-hmm. And he says, I'm just having trouble wrapping my head around it. And he says, I'm canceling my program until the end of the year. He says, I'm not doing any more programs this year. Yeah. And I said, I understand. How can you wrap your head around that? And that many friends, and then his aunt just died and all that. And I said, you need time to heal. Time is the great healer. And I said, I totally understand. No problem. We'll connect again months later or whatever. But it's, how do you? I mean, I just remember sitting there in shock and awe, with tears running down our cheeks, Sherry and myself.
Yep.
I mean, that could have been us. That could have been you.
It could, easily. And and today is shooting in Maryland at this office complex, and it's just this country seems to be tearing itself apart internally. It's imploding. We are literally imploding.
Yes, it is.
We are imploding.
That's
on
the
ourselves.
word. That's the word. Imploding.
We are, and it kills me. It literally rips out my heart to see this happening to our country. But again, coming back to what we're talking about, the paranormal, the supernatural, the esoteric, these higher meanings, higher purposes. This is why things like this, this is exactly why people are turned to the paranormal. They're looking for answers. They're looking for some type of stability, something that is going to bring meaning. And that is, going back to, having been a minister, that was one of the things I had a problem with, is that people expected, as an ordained minister, for me to have answers. I don't have answers. I don't have the answers, folks. I will tell you, I have nothing. I can't give you anything. And one of the things that I did as a minister, I was a chaplain for both hospice and for our sheriff's department.
Oh boy.
Yeah, and it got very cumbersome after a while to be at so many deaths. The deaths far outweighed the births or the marriages.
Gee.
And knocking on someone's door at 2 a.m. to tell them that someone had been killed in a car accident or died in an overdose or had committed suicide. And the suicide...
I pass.
The suicides... Yeah, the suicides were the tough ones, because I am, and I put this out there, I'm one of those individuals. I don't necessarily think that suicide will send you to hell, and I had a lot of people that believe that, and I don't think that, because suicide is a way out for people, unfortunately.
Right.
And many times our physical and mental state is just not enough to handle what we're going through, and we take the easiest out. And I don't think that God is going to punish someone for doing that.
And I think that's one of the reasons, again, why people are turning to the paranormal.
Yes,
because of the no dogma. No,
exactly.
But Sherry and I say, even researching, we can't have a dogma. There is no dogma in paranormal research. You can't have dogma. You have to be open to everything that you will experience, and not make snap judgments, not make analyses on the spot, and then expect someone else to agree with you or to live by what you say. That's what I guess why I have stayed in it for these many, many years, is that it gives me that freedom, to really express it. Again, what you were saying, I just couldn't do that. People have said, they come up to me after a lecture or whatever, and they're throwing this and throwing that at me or whatever. I don't mean literally, I mean questions. And right. Some people are hostile and so forth. And they'll say to me, you're just really remarkable. You just don't show emotion. Well, they don't know the real me. I mean, I cry at Hallmark commercials, and I just couldn't. What you were saying, Travis, I just don't think I could do. I mean, I just couldn't do that, knocking on the door, and that's just.
It's.
I can see, I think, forgive me. But I think the kind of person that can do that, and that's why we mustn't judge, that kind of person, I think, has to have a dogma, or he couldn't do it.
And that is why I don't. One of the reasons I don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
There, you know, that
But
is not.
do you agree? Do you agree with me? Do you agree with me? Do you see what I mean?
I do, because in moments like that, people are looking. They're not looking necessarily for an answer. They are looking for stability, and there's a difference.
Right.
There's a difference.
Right.
They need emotional stability. They need psychological stability. They need spiritual stability, and they are looking for a rock to lean on. And if you
Exactly.
do not have that, and you cannot
Right.
be that, then you don't need to be in that role. And that was something I was ill prepared for, because I can't do that. I can't sit there and tell someone, give them a blanketed BS dogmatic answer just to give them the support that they're needing at that point in time.
Right. Right. Right.
And that may make me a cold, heartless bastard. It may make me, you know, it may make me a lot of things.
But why force yourself in the role of a hypocrite?
Exactly. And I did that. And I did that in many ways. Because, actually, one of the statements that I've used is that I sucked as a role model as a minister. I did. I sucked as a role model. I was not somebody you wanted to look up to. Southern Baptists don't want their ministers drinking scotch and smoking cigars and having conversations. They don't. But I did that. I sucked as a role model. But I did open dialogue. I had people talking. For whatever reason, was able to take this little tiny church that was running 19 on Sunday morning, and there were some Sundays we were running 400. And it was because there was an openness. It had nothing to do with me, but there was we got people thinking and talking and reaching into the community and doing things and actually being active and acting on their faith, not just saying, "Oh, I believe this because Grandma and Grandpa believed it," or whatever.
No. The faith to be real has to be acted upon. I mean,
exactly.
Otherwise, it's just like an old shirt you put on and you're kind of embarrassed to wear it. I mean, you have to, faith has to be living. And that's why, again, to structure I shouldn't even bring this up, we've said it, I guess. I was just going to say the difficulty, I hate leaving things when I don't finish. That's not fair.
Yes.
But just as you're saying, to sell someone a structure in which you cannot totally believe or accept is the role of the hypocrite.
It is.
I couldn't do it, and you couldn't do it.
No, and wouldn't want to.
Now, I know I'm a good enough actor that, and I had everyone, and that was my first wife, had a beautiful alto voice. She sang solos in the Messiah every year and so forth, and just a wonderful voice. And her concept when we got married is I would be the pastor and she'd be the choir director.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Well, that didn't work out, and I couldn't do, and I couldn't be who I was not. And so many years of ridicule and what do? You're writing that crazy stuff? I thought you'd be writing, or you'd be a preacher, or you'd be still teaching, and so forth. Well, I love teaching. I love interacting with the students. But in terms of making that next step, many of them came for consultations, but this was the 60s. And what they were asking about, I know, I couldn't give the standard answer that I would be expected to give. I had to listen to them, and I had to give them faith in themselves and hope in themselves. And as you say, the role of the hypocrite, I just find disgusting.
Yeah, it is a very...
Not to be judgmental.
No. Well, no. You know what? It works for some people. Some people can do it. And
yes.
And it's one of those things, there are certain areas of my life, sure, I mean, I'm a salesman. I do advertising, PR, branding, public relations.
Yeah,
That's what I do.
right.
I can do those things. But when it comes to selling someone something that, is going to impact their spiritual well-being, I can't. I'm not a snake oil salesman. I can't do that.
No,
I'm not gonna.
no,
I'm
no.
not. I'm not gonna go down that road. I really am.
And Lord help us, there are too many snake oil salesmen out there now.
Yes, there are.
It's incredible. It's incredible. Sherry and I sometimes just before the program, we were watching something on television and the news, and we just shook our heads and said, this is beyond belief, but it's happening right in front of our eyes. So they're out there enough. We have enough. And that's one of the other reasons why our country is being split and divided. Yes. And I'd like to think somehow, in whether it's just pure ego gratification, but when I receive letters from people who say the book helped them, helped them with their personal problems, helped them with troubles they were having, that to me is the greatest reward possible on earth.
Well, absolutely. I mean, because obviously, you were drawn to the paranormal to help yourself and find some answers, and in so doing, you mentioned being a Gnostic transcendentalist. Well, transcending, is kind of just moving to the next level of understanding. So if you're able to help anybody do that in any form or fashion, I'm going, yeah, that's a win as far as I'm concerned. If you can take somebody to the next level of understanding, that's great. I mean, whatever you're talking about.
Whatever you're talking about.
Exactly.
Well, going back to the book, there's one I would like to share because it's these kind of adventures in the unknown particularly intrigue me. And that's where someone seems to walk into a scene from the past.
Yes.
Or can there be truly time travelers? Or, what is it? So in this same book we started talking about, but branched into so many profound and delightful ways, in my opinion. The personal encounter of Rick Yale. Now, he was grew to be a friend of mine through correspondence. He had read a couple of my books and got turned on, and we kept corresponding. And he had a number of personal experiences, and this one he shared, which I thought was very interesting. He just goes in to buy his wife some cigarettes. Not that I particularly approve of that, but that's their choice. And he saw 5 people. They looked to be in their mid-20s, and they strike him as odd right away, and because they have artifacts with them, their suitcases. The guy takes out a cigarette case to smoke, and it's one of those 1940-ish gold cases, and he talks to the clerk, or he talks to the people, and they ask, and the clerk says, what are you people up to? Who are you? And Rick says, he's been in the store for 5 years, and he's never seen these people. These are really strange. There's only one female who wears a large ribbed corduroy jumper-type dress, a pair of real leather white 1960 go-go boots, a cotton wool 40 types coat, the like you haven't seen since watching It's a Wonderful Life.
Yep.
And I'm tingling from the energy they all wear old style clothing. So I start to look at their faces and try to get them talk, or at least listen to them talk. And anyway, he goes on to describe the 5 suitcases. Each suitcase looked just as strange as the people were. The old-fashioned, made with the fabric, basket weave design. And out they go. And then he turns to the woman behind the counter and says, who were those weird people? And she says, who? What weird people? And she says, he says, well, I asked her what they're up to, what do they want, why did they need the cigars for a play? None of the five made eye contact all the while they're in the tobacco store, nor did they turn and look at me. Of the five bizarre people, they began to cross the parking lot. They cross in front of the car where his wife is parked, waiting for her cigarettes. And when he comes out, he says he opens the door. He's just wondering where their car is, and poof, they disappear. 2:00 in the afternoon, broad daylight, they vanish. And I asked the clerk, and she's still freaked out because she says, well, I remember kind of someone standing at the counter, but she can't remember anything else. Now, those stories particularly intrigued me because what are they really telling us, Travis? I mean, did Rick, he's not a drinker, he's not one given to hallucination. He's a former serviceman, and he leads, as far as I determined from our correspondence, a very clean, well-ordered life.
Right.
And he has this experience. And why are the five strangers there? Are they there to show him that there's a dimension beyond? Are they there to show, well, the wife, she said she's sitting out all the time. She's annoyed because she's waiting for her cigarettes, and she didn't see anyone in the store but him and the clerk. And she's getting a little PO'd because she's saying, why are you spending all the time with the clerk and not bringing my cigarettes out?
Yep.
And what is this little drama, this little play? I mean, are these, like traveling minstrels? Do they move from place to place doing their little dramas, their little skits? And those stories, I just love them when they come in from people because they're all people. That they don't write in a fancy quill or anything. They simply say what happened and how shaken they were by it. And the more they think about it, the more shaken they become. What did they really see? Did they go into? Well, they didn't go into the past because this is the tobacco store that he goes into all the time.
Right.
And he's never seen them before. And the clerk he knows well from being in there frequently. And, it's just a mystery. Where'd they go? They just vanished into thin air.
Well,
I'm sorry. He keeps saying then, well, there were 5 customers that were there before. And she gets really mad. She says, no, there weren't. And again, the wife gets mad, the clerk gets mad, saying that there were 5 customers beside him. And, where do we place this in our notebook? Under what chapter do we place this? So that's why, I kind of wonder why they particularly put it in here, but in this particular book, but darn it makes dang good reading wherever, I think.
It does. It was one of those things that reminds me, when I was reading the Mothman Prophecies by Kill, he would talk about these individuals that were showing up in Point Pleasant. And
right.
they have come, they were labeled as men in black, but they weren't really dressed like the men in black of traditional pop culture, but they were dressed oddly. Their clothing wasn't quite in norm with the late 1960s. Their language definitely wasn't. They used weird terms. They looked at everyday items like they were very, very bizarre. They would pick up ink pens and staplers and look at them like they had never seen them before. And there was always this one there were two things that they would say. They would always ask what time it was or what year it was.
Yeah.
And they would say, you will know in time, or you will see in time. So there was this time. What's the word I'm looking for? This time element to what was going on there. Were these people aliens? Were they extraterrestrials, ultra-terrestrials, interdimensional, time travelers? What was going on with these individuals? Because they acted like their clothes didn't fit. They were ill-kept. And when I read that chapter, and then listening to you tell it again, that was what immediately sprung to my mind, was that these were people that were... And we see that in modern day, Hollywood films. When time travelers from one time come to another, they grab whatever they can to try to fit in.
I'm sorry. Finish
No,
what you're saying.
It just doesn't always work that way. Just because you grab something doesn't mean you're going to fit in.
No. I love time traveler movies, but I've never really seen one that really works for me. I mean, there's always that... Well, it's not as bold as the grandfather paradox. What happens if you kill your grandfather when you're traveling, and then, of course, you won't be born because your father wasn't born.
Yes.
So all of those things. But just the whole idea of, can there be time trips? I mean, now, one story John Keel never put into his books, but... since you met John and got to know him a little bit, the very first time, I can't remember, I was in one of my first trips to New York, if not the first trip. And he called me up and said, let's go out for dinner. And I said, great. And that's when he took me to a Chinese restaurant, my first Chinese restaurant. Afterwards, we went back to his apartment. And of course, at that time, he had been writing about the Men in Black, and they did the same things you're saying. They would usually ask what time it was and so forth. And so we were kind of in the mood of going into the unknown and sharing our experiences and adventures and interpretations and so forth. But when we got to his apartment, we sat for a while, and then he says, I'm going to tell you something that happened to me. And, you deal with it as you wish. And John told me that one night he was sitting in his apartment, and suddenly there wasn't a knock on the door. There were just three entities that came through the door. And they said who they were. And they said they were, from another dimension or whatever. I don't remember exactly now, but they identified themselves. And then to prove that they were not human, they reached under his sink and said, well, what is this? And John said it was Clorox, a disinfectant. And they each took big swallows of it and say, oh, that tasted good. When normally, of course, it would kill someone or their throats would burst into flame. And then they disappeared. Now, I don't feel I betrayed anything because John surely dealt with many type expressions of that kind of adventure of the mind, of the spirit, of time, of space, and the various mysteries that go along with it. I remember at the time I was really in good shape. I had been lifting weights for decades and so forth, and thought, I was really a living powerhouse of a man. But all the way home to my hotel room, I'm looking over my shoulder because there's just the way John told the story that made me very uneasy, and certainly put the thought in, what the heck would I do? I mean, if three such entities come, would I be powerless? I would like to think I would just pick them up and hurl them, but the more and the darker it got, I thought, no, And it was a very uneasy night. And I've thought of it many times, that I know John wasn't putting me on, and he wasn't just doing it to give the country boy a thrill when he visited the big city. And there was no reason for him to, because we had talked very seriously and sober all night where we were sitting in the restaurant eating. So this little adventure or invasion of John's apartment, I thought, it's always stuck with me, just what were they? What were they? I mean, here again, we're left with that. Who are we really dealing with? What are we really dealing with?
Mm-hmm. And we don't know. That is what it.
Yeah.
We just do not know. Now, Wendy again messaged me and asked a question going back to the tobacco store story about the visitors.
Yeah.
How long had the smoke store been there? She asked.
I don't know that, but he says that he frequented regularly, so I assume that it had been a business that had been in town for quite a few years.
Okay.
But I have no way of knowing. He just describes it as a tobacco store.
But so yeah, I think she was just curious to find out what the history maybe of the tobacco store was, and it's
and if these people may have been related to the store rather
right.
than to the people witnessing it. But I don't think so in this case. I don't think so.
Yeah. Oh.
It was next to here. I'd finished shopping for groceries with my wife and stopped next door at the tobacco store to buy her some cigarettes.
Wendy will have to research. We'll have to go see. Find out. Oh, well, Brad, it's hard to believe that we have about 5 minutes left in the show. It has. I would love to have you. We digressed tonight, and I apologize. But I would I would love to have you come back on to finish talking about the other books in the series, and hopefully before the end of the year. If we can get you back on before January, I would love that. If not, then I know the holidays are very busy. We'll get you back on after the first, but I want you to come back on and talk about these books, even though it won't be Halloween. I think these books, while they have scary content and things like that, I do believe that
they'll be spooky all year.
They will be. They will be. But I cannot thank you enough for joining me on the program tonight. You have been an amazing guest. I've had a blast just talking to you.
Well, I have sincerely enjoyed it very much, Travis.
Now, how can, for folks who want to get the ebooks or order any more of your books, how can they go about doing that?
The best thing is through one of the online bookstores, Amazon or Barnes & Noble or anyone else like that. I think those are the big two, probably. The gorillas in the room.
Yes. Now, what if they have a story that they want to relay to you? Maybe a piece of something they want you to research, maybe just a tidbit of information that they want to pass on.
Oh,
how can they contact you?
Well, regretfully, although we like to think, Sherry and I like to think that we are universally loved and revered, some people may not hold us in high esteem because someone wiped out our website.
Seriously?
And we have just moved. We haven't actually moved the house, but we're living in a new house, and this is a new address, and that was a new phone number you called. So we don't have a website, and we're really upset about that because even one of my daughters wrote and said, "Oh, there was so much good material on there."
So was the material, is it irretrievable? Is it totally lost, or is there the possibility of getting it back?
Oh, we'll put it on. But what Sherry wants to do is create a new website and so forth.
Okay.
But I do not mind people emailing direct. And, that would be Brad and Sherry Steiger at gmail.com.
And we will post that to our Facebook pages and the other social media outlets so the folks can continue doing that. And then, of course, going to Amazon and just typing in Brad Steiger. Or even just going to Google and typing in Brad Steiger, the very first page that comes up is your Amazon page. And folks can go there and order any of the books that you have. 170-some titles, over 17 million in print and sold, and hopefully that number is going to go up in the coming year.
Hopefully.
We are looking very forward to it. And definitely, I will actually email you, if not tonight, tomorrow, because I would love to have you back on before the end of the year.
We'll definitely try. Like you say, we're in the process of moving, and you know what that means.
Oh, I do.
And and then the holiday. But I'd love to come on again. I really had a great time.
Wonderful. And Wendy has reminded me to tell folks to look at your Facebook page as well, because you do have a Facebook page.
That got wiped out too.
Did that one get wiped out? Okay. So no.
I mean, you will see a residue of it hanging there. I think the last thing that is posted is when Prince passed away.
Yes.
Because okay, and that's. It stops there. So, I mean, we aren't using that anymore either. So, someone did a real number on it.
Wow, they did. I thought I was the only person who had people pissed off like that and doing stuff like that. Because before we went on the air, I was talking to Carly, who was doing the production for us. I spent most of the weekend and Monday wiping out a bogus Facebook account that someone had set up in my name.
Oh boy!
So that was a nightmare all weekend, and so I feel a little bit of your pain. But I do have to say, back in June at my 9-to-5 job at the radio station, I got hit with the ransomware. They encrypted everything on my hard drive and everything on my flash drive, and were wanting me to pay to retrieve it. And I just told our IT people, I said, I don't care, fuck it, wipe it clean. I can start all over. And it was, I lost about 18 months worth of work in some regard, but I'm also old school because I make hard copies of everything. So I literally had hard copy files of everything that was on my computer.
Yeah.
But it's amazing what people will do.
Amazing. And what satisfaction they get, I don't know. And I don't want to know.
No, neither do I. And I was not about to pay them money. So
No, I wouldn't either.
So, Brad, thank you.
Well, happy Halloween. Happy.
You too. And I will be in touch with you. We're going to get you back on, and we'll be posting at least if you give me permission, I will post your email address to Facebook so that folks can reach out to you if they want to talk to you about a particular topic.
Sure.
And we'll post the Amazon link and things like that. And
very good.
And we are going to say good evening. We will be back next Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central, with Nick Redfern. We'll be talking shapeshifters, and we're going to be talking about getting Brad back on in the coming weeks. Right now, Carly.
Nick will scare you with his shapeshifters.
He will. Nick has been on several times, and I just finished his book last week while I was in Louisville, so I'm looking forward to talking with him about that. But Brad, again, appreciate you so much being on. Wendy,
I enjoyed it, truly I did.
And Wendy, we hope you feel better, and you need to get better so you can be back on the show with me next week as opposed to just texting me. Carly, thank you for running interference and holding down the studio. We are going to exit tonight. We're just going to go ahead. It's already 11. We'll just play the out, and we'll be good to go. So everyone have a great evening.
Thank you for joining us tonight. You've been listening to Mystic Moon Cafe. Join us every Wednesday from 9 to 11 p.m. Eastern. Be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. On behalf of Wendy Schindler, this is Travis Short saying have a great rest of your week.